Hello, everyone. We've all seen pawn shops, right? But have you ever wondered what's really going on behind those counters? Well, it's this whole fascinating legal world, and it's all governed by something called the law of pledge. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see what really makes a pawn shop tick.
I mean, on the surface, it seems so simple. You hand over a watch, you get some cash. Easy. But what's the actual legal reality of that transaction? What just happened in the eyes of the law? Let's take that watch and follow it on its legal journey.
All right, first things first. That moment you shake hands on the deal, well, it's not just about borrowing money. It's actually way more formal than you might think.
See, you're not just a borrower anymore. By entering into this formal agreement, this pledge, you've become what the law calls a pledger. And the pawn shop? They're not just a lender, they're the pledgee. You've both just become parties in a very specific, legally recognized contract.
So, what is a pledge really? Well, at its heart, it's a deal where you, the debtor, hand over a movable item, like our watch, to the pawn shop, the creditor. And this is all to secure the loan. The whole point, the entire foundation of this agreement, is the promise that you'll get your item back once you've paid off that debt. Okay, so this contract has some unique DNA. Let's break it down. First, it's a real contract, which is a fancy way of saying the deal isn't official until you physically hand over the item. No delivery, no pledge. It's also an accessory contract, meaning it can't exist by itself. It's literally attached to the main loan. And it's unilateral, because once you've handed over the watch, the biggest legal duty now falls on the pawn shop to keep it safe and return it when you pay up.
Just like any good recipe, a legally valid pledge needs a few key ingredients. If you're missing even one of these, the whole thing just falls apart.
So let's run through the must-haves. Number 1, it has to be securing a real loan. 2, you have to be the absolute owner. You can't just pawn your roommate's gaming console, okay? 3, you need free disposal, which just means you have the clear right to pledge it. No one else has a claim on it. And finally, number 4, the item has to be something that can actually be sold if, things go south and you can't pay back the loan.
And here's a pretty cool little twist on that ownership rule. You can actually use your own property to secure a loan for somebody else, maybe a friend or a family member. The law has a name for this. It's called an accommodation pledge. So the contract is set. Your watch is now sitting in the pawn shop's vault. What happens now? What are the rights and responsibilities for both sides? Let's take a look at the rules of the game.
This here perfectly shows the balance of power. As the owner, it's still your watch. You technically still own it. You could even sell it, believe it or not, as long as the pawn shop is cool with it. The pawn shop, on the other hand, gets to hold on to it. And this is a big but, they have a serious legal duty to take care of it with the diligence of a good father of a family. That's the actual legal phrase. It means they can't just let their employees wear your watch for a night out on the town.
Now, out of all these rules, there is one line in the sand that is so fundamental, so important, that if a creditor crosses it, that part of the contract becomes totally void.
It's a mouthful, but it's called pactum commissarium. And what it means is that any agreement that lets the creditor, the pawn shop, automatically keep your stuff if you fail to pay is illegal. Period. The law sees it as fundamentally unfair, and it's just not allowed.
So here's the bottom line. If you default on the loan, the pawn shop can't just declare, well, I guess this watch is mine now. That automatic takeover of your property is illegal. The only legal path they have to get their money back is to sell the item through a formal public auction.
And that brings our little pawn shop story to its climax. The loan period is up, you're standing at a crossroads. What happens now? There are really two main paths this can go down. A pledge can end in a few ways, but let's be real, it usually boils down to one of two things: payment or public sale. The best case scenario, obviously, is you pay off the debt, the contract is done, and your item is right back where it belongs, with you. The other path, if you can't pay, is that formal sale. And let's just hammer this home one more time because it is that important. Defaulting on the loan does not mean you automatically forfeit your property. The law demands a clear, fair process, a public sale, to settle the debt. This is all about protecting you, the debtor, from an unfair loss. So you're probably thinking, wow, this is all so formal, but all I ever got was this tiny little paper ticket. Well, as one huge court case showed, that little piece of paper, it packs a serious legal punch. So get this, it all kicked off back in 1997.
when the tax man came after Tambunting Pawn Shop, saying their pawn tickets should be taxed. The pawn shop fired back, saying, no, these are just simple receipts. This fight over what to call a small piece of paper went all the way to the Supreme Court. And here it is, the final word from the highest court in the land. They said, and this is a direct quote, "A pawn ticket is not merely a receipt for a pawn, but is the evidence of the contract of pledge." That little ticket contains all the essential elements of the entire deal you just made. So, what's the big lesson here? It's a classic legal principle: substance over form. It doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it a receipt, a ticket, a slip, whatever. The law looks at what it does. And a pawn ticket does the job of a full-blown pledge contract.
Just to give you some extra context, let's quickly compare a pledge to a mortgage. Think of it this way. A pledge is for movable things, jewelry, phones, stuff you can carry, and it requires you to physically hand it over. A mortgage, on the other hand, is for immovable property, like a house or a piece of land. Two different tools for two different kinds of property.
And that brings our journey to a close. So I'll just leave you with this one final thought. The next time you walk past a pawn shop, I hope you see something different. Not just a store with things in the window, but a place where hundreds of complex, fascinating legal contracts are being forged every single day. You'll know that behind the glass isn't just a collection of stuff, but a collection of legally binding promises.